All right, guys, we're gonna work on sliding and then sliding to the middle of the ring and pivoting to our left and pivoting to our right as a right-hander and as a southpaw. So I'm gonna demonstrate, stay tuned, and learn how to pivot when you're in the middle of the ring. All right, guys, so we're gonna start with pivoting to our left as a right-handed fighter. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna get in your stance right here, hands up, chin down. All you're gonna do is when you slide, you're gonna slide in your stance, but you're not gonna slide up, you're gonna slide forward. So you're gonna be here, taking steps forward, getting into the middle of the ring. Once you're here, you're gonna go on the ball of your front foot on your toe. You're just gonna turn and pivot like that, where my back is facing the neutral corner. Then I'll slide back right here, okay? Then I'll slide forward again. Remember, once I land, I'll pivot. I will make sure that once I'm here on the ball of my foot, that I'll turn, pivot, slide back, okay? What you don't want to do, guys, is slide up. Here's what a lot of beginners I see when they're learning how to slide, they're sliding up. As your feet leaving the ground and you're exposing yourself, you're making yourself taller. You guys need to make sure here, I'm tall, even though I'm tall, I'm a tall fighter. You see how I'm staying low? I'm staying low, making sure when I pivot, I'm right there. Another thing is, you see how I'm facing each corner? That's what you gotta do. A lot of people, when they'll slide, they'll be here. It's not bad. We're learning how to do changing angles, working corners. But let's learn it first, how to go to our four corners first. Here, where we're getting the full angles. Once we get the angles, then we can have fun with it and play around and then shorten it up, working on different things. But first, right here, pivot, slide back. One more mistake I see when people, when they pivot, they'll pivot. Look at my back leg, they cross right behind. If I was to slide, remember when I taught early on, the basics in boxing, I said this was the worst position to be in. And that's what a lot of people do. They'll pivot, boom, like this. You have no leverage, you're off balance. You need to be right here. Pivot, that leg follows. But it stays where I'm in a good stance. It doesn't overcommit. Pivot, see right there. Always in a good stance, okay? And then, actually, it just dawned on me, we got one more mistake. Another thing people will do is they'll do a fast pivot, but then they'll leave this leg behind where it's dragging like that. You can hear it. You'll hear it every time they're just dragging their feet. You don't want that because it'll slow you down. You just want to be here. Pivot, change the angle real quick where you're ready to punch right off that. Ready to punch right off that at any given moment you're ready to fight. You don't want to be here and that leg is falling behind, dragging you behind. All right, so some common mistakes when pivoting to the left I see is when you slide, if you guys were watching earlier, I'm staying low like this. Big mistake I see is people, they'll stand tall and they will actually bounce up. This is bad because one, your feet are leaving the ground. You don't ever want your feet to leave the ground. Two, is you're exposing yourself taller, so you're making yourself easier to target because you're standing up rather than being here low where it's easier to weave, to slip, or even to throw a punch right off that. By me standing tall and jumping up, I would have to wait till my feet land before I can throw a punch or before I can start slipping and weaving. Too much time, and literally seconds, 1 second is the difference in boxing. That's a lifetime. That's why you want to be here. So the moment you see anything, I can slip, I can weave, but that's in the future. Also, like I said, by me coming up, I'd have to wait till I land, then pivot. So it would be something like this. That's too long in a boxing fight, rather than you just being here right away, pivot, ready to go. Another thing I've noticed is when people pivot, you see, I pivot where I'm facing opposite corners. See, my front shoulder is pointing forward, my right shoulder is pointing back. One thing I notice with people is when they pivot, they over pivot. So watch my feet. They'll pivot. You see what I'm doing? we call it the ice skate, or not ice skate, the skateboard. You look like a skater. Because you look, my left foot is sliding back on my right foot. And that's not a good proper stance. I can lose balance, I can trip on my own feet. I don't ever want that. I want to be here. See, I can slide my foot. Is there not crossing? I'm in a good stance. And I'm still ready in position to punch, to weave, to slip right off there. So that's one thing you should keep in mind is when you pivot, short pivots, and your legs follow, nothing big, especially with the back leg. So I'm here on my toe. See how it's almost like a half circle it just made with my back leg. Right there. Going from here to there, to the neutral corner, where I'm able to face that neutral corner, and then I can slide it back. So those are some key things to keep in mind when you're sliding and trying to pivot to the left. Don't overcommit on the pivot where your legs are behind each other. Don't slide up, making yourself taller. Stay nice and low, compact. I'm not saying where you gotta be low like this, but a nice good bend in the knees and sliding just back and forth like that is so much better than standing tall and jumping while you're sliding. Okay, now we're gonna pivot to our right. So it's gonna be the same thing. So we're gonna slide to the middle of the ring, here. Now, same thing, I'm gonna land on the ball of my front foot, but instead of turning my body and going that way, I'm gonna turn, face this way. See how I did that? It's all my foot and my hips where I just swing, and my leg, where I just swing and turn like that, okay? That's our pivot to our right. We're gonna just turn, face that way. Then we're gonna slide back, okay? Slide forward. Remember, once you get to the middle, that front foot lands on the toe, immediately just turn right there, slide back, slide forward, step, pivot to the right, and then slide back. Okay, now here are some common mistakes. We already know, don't go up. I already explained that. Going to the pivoting to your left. Don't go, jump up. But another mistake I see when you guys are sliding and you're pivoting to your right, I've noticed that people, when they swing their hips, they will turn but get in a wide stance. You see how I that little move, my leg, I went, they'll pivot, and they'll open their stance and wide. Literally, when you do that, your leg should just, boom, just turn. Wherever your stance is, it just turns and follows the leg. Turns and goes back, turns and go forward. See, like that? It's like I'm almost doing one half circle. Like if you're wondering what a half circle, look at my foot. It's just like that. It's almost like if I was to go around, I can draw a circle with my back leg. But, so if you hear me say half circle, that's what I'm referencing. So it's like I'm turning right there, facing that corner. I'm still in my stance, I can punch. Then I can slide out. Another mistake that people do is they'll square up. So they'll overdo it, turn real quick, and you see how I'm here? Both my shoulders are pointing forward. By doing that, they went real quick, they'll end up something like that. They'll swing, they'll end up here, or they'll end up here, where the stance is a little wide, but both shoulders are. And even when they try to turn, you can see this leg's over here, my right shoulder wants to turn with it. It doesn't want to go back here. It's an awkward position. So make sure when you're doing that to the right, is you're turning and facing. It's just small little turn to the right. Turn to the right. Just a small little thing. I'm on that front toe, remember. Turn to the right. Turn to the right. Okay? That's one of the key things and big mistakes I see is the over-commitment on the pivot when going to the right, where they square up, or there'll be the stance, kicking your stance out wide. Make sure your legs stay nice, compact, close, and you're always in your stance at all times, right here, able to turn and be ready to fight at all costs. So those are some key things just to keep an eye out when you're going to your right. All right, now we're gonna work on pivoting to our right as a southpaw. So I'm in my southpaw stance. Here, I'm sliding forward, nice and low. Once I get the middle, I'm gonna be on my ball, my right foot. I'm gonna turn my body's gonna swing to the right, but I'm gonna face my left, okay? So if you guys hear me, I'm like, that's not the right. I'm just turning my body. I'm pivoting to the right, facing the left, okay? But you see how I did that small little pivot? Turn, and I slide back. I slide forward. Once that foot, you saw that? Once that foot lands on the ball of my front foot, I'll turn. It's a lot easier and a lot smoother when you're on your toe like that to turn. Really, it's all just in your foot right there, your front foot. Does all the work, just turning, and your hips turn and swing around, okay? That's where you just work. Turn your body and pivoting. Slide back. Same thing, staying nice and low, not jumping up. Just step, pivot, back. I'm facing one corner, and my back's facing another one, and I'll just slide right back, okay? So that's how you will slide and pivot to your right. So one big mistake I see when people try to pivot to their right is they'll slide in nicely, but they'll be flat-footed, and they'll turn, and you see how my foot's not moving? That's what I see with them. They won't turn. Everything's turning their body, and right before they get to this back foot where it lands, they'll turn their whole foot and then drop down. And I don't like that because, one, it hurts my knee doing that. Two, it's like your body's not moving as one. It's like you're fighting against your own self. Like your left leg is trying to move and turn, but your front leg is like glued here, and then you're forcing it to turn like that rather than, like I explained earlier, being on the toe and everything in one fluid motion. You see how it turns? Like that, just right here. People will just be here, turn, and then last second try to turn. And this is also where I see, you see how I'm no longer facing, I'm facing straight ahead over there, and that's why I see people overshooting their pivots, is because they're trying to turn, force it by doing that, so they don't feel no pain in their knee, and they're overcompensating, and they're facing away from the cone. Facing away from a corner. And right now, I have you guys pointing to corners because I want you guys learning angles. I want you guys working on angles. Eventually, you can get to the point where you can just do that small, where you're facing straight ahead. You see, I'm facing in between the two corners. I'm facing straight in the middle of the rope. You can get to a point, but when you're first starting off, it's always good to work on corners because you're learning how to, boom, whole body to change angles. So that's another reason why I don't like, being flat-footed and here, because then it forces you out of your corner, one of the corners, and not teaching you the proper angle. You're kind of overshooting your angles. So just make sure, see, I'm not flat, I'm not turning my body like that. And then last second, don't do that. Right here on the toe, just turn. Another thing I see is people will slide to the middle here. You see how I'm low? Perfect. Everything's good. They'll get to the ball of the foot. They'll turn, and for some reason, they'll stand tall. And look at my stance. My feet are too close together. I noticed that. They'll be here. Pivot, stand tall, and then they'll try to crouch down and go low. I don't like that. It's because you went from being low to making yourself taller, meaning more to hit. Second reason I don't like that, look at how close my feet are. I can trip on my own feet. I'm not in a good position to throw hard shots. I can throw punches, but are they effective punches? No, they are not. So that's, once again, going back to my half circle. That's why when I pivot, keep my knees bent, just turn, and I'll stay low like that. I don't, by rushing, try to stand tall and bring my feet close together. Even in boxing, you can get hit with a shot, and it may not be hard, but it can knock you down, and you don't want that. You want to stay here, grounded. So if you do get hit, you're able to better take the punch and absorb it better. So that's why, keep that in mind when you're sliding. Just here, I'll ball my front foot, swing that hip around. See how my hip is facing that back corner? And I'll slide back out, okay? So those are some just little details just to keep in mind when you're working on pivoting to right facing the left as a southpaw. All right. So now we're gonna slide to the middle ring and pivot to our left. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna be here. Once again, ball on my front foot. I'm gonna pivot my body to my left, but I'm gonna face the right. So I'm gonna turn, face there. And I'm gonna slide back. So when you step, remember, you're on the ball of the foot. You just swing your body, your hips, your shoulders, they all do the work for you. And you're gonna turn and face the corner. You see, it's just that little shift right there, and now slide back. Not much movement going on from here, turning, one quick. But you see, making sure, that's one of the key things, guys, is when you're doing this, making sure your body is one, it's moving as one. You don't want your legs here and then turn and shift. One, smooth. See how my shoulders, my hips, my foot, the pivot, everything is going in one motion. And once I'm ready, got that corner, you see how I'm ready? My foot landed, I'm ready to turn where I can then punch, or like we're doing, sliding straight back. Real simple, real easy. Just make sure, as in my next, we're gonna explain the simple mistakes not to make. Okay, so here's a simple mistake I see, but it's very costly, is people will slide to the middle. They'll do ball on the front foot. They'll turn, but you'll see one of their body will move before the other one. So, for example, you saw my shoulder moved first, and then my legs followed. That's one thing I've noticed is people don't move as one. And it's the same thing I seen the other way. Is where they're here on the toe, they'll swing their foot, but you see how my front foot is not pointing and my shoulder isn't pointing. Then they'll try to rush. So they'll be here trying to rush and do it like that, instead of making it one smooth pivot just like that. So that's a key mistake. It's a simple mistake not to do. Just make sure your body moves as one, but a costly mistake, because see, if I'm here and this foot is lagging behind, I'm ready to get hit and I'm not ready to punch because my foot's in the air. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure when you're ready here, see, I can slip, I can land and punch right away. That's why you want your body moving as one. Another mistake I see people do is they'll slide, they'll leave their foot there, they'll turn, but you see how my foot didn't turn? They'll stay here, and then they'll try to slide back. And you may say, what's the problem with that? They got the angle they needed. But if I was to go forward, say slide forward, see how I have to slide my foot in and then push out like that. You never, when you're going forward, you never bring your left foot, then your right. It's always right, left. So in case something happens, I can hop back. As I explained, teaching the basics, your basic punches and basic step with your punches in my earlier videos. So that's why you don't want to be here. Also, another thing is I can throw a hook, but there's no power because I can't turn my foot and my hips. My foot is pointing that way, so I can't turn into a powerful hook compared if I'm here, I'm balling my foot. Turn, I can turn and throw a power hook. I can step forward and jab. See, I have more things, more weapons available rather than me just turning here. The only thing I can do is shoot a left hand, and even then, I can't get full body because I can't turn fully into that shot because my foot's there. Rather than being here, I can turn all the way. And the only really safe option is going backwards if my foot was like this. So that's why you want to just make sure you're here. Boom, turn. I can punch, I can go forward, I can go back. I got a lot more to do by that simple being on that ball of that foot and just turning. So just keep in mind, those are some simple mistakes not to make. Now, if you don't have a ring, don't worry. You can do the same exact thing that we were practicing. In the ring, you can do it as if you got cones. You can use 5 cones. Put 4 corners, as you see here, and then 1 cone in the middle. That'll be your 5th cone to help you, tell you where your middle is, where you can pivot. So, for example, I'm here. I'm in my stance. I can slide, pivot, slide back. See, it still works the same thing. Pivot, turn, slide back. It still works the same thing. What we did in the ring, what I was demonstrating, out here, it works the same thing. Even in Southpaw, in your southpaw stance. Here, pivot. Nothing changes. These cones still work the same way as your corners. Here. Then once you guys start feeling comfortable, like you got it, you can get rid of the middle cone. Because you won't have a middle cone or anything to tell you where the middle is when you step into a ring. Once you get confident. There you go. Slide. Pivot. Turn. Turn. Pivot to right. Pivot to the right. And you can work on different things like that. Same thing. Pivot to the left. Pivot to the left. Slide back. You can have so much fun. Just because you don't have a ring, guys, doesn't mean you can stop. You can still do the same exact thing we did in the ring out here on cones. So you can do it in the backyard. You can do it in a park. You can do it wherever. Don't let, just because you don't have a ring, stop you. If you saw one of my videos, my earlier videos, I taught you guys head movement. You saw it. We had a truck, a pole, and hand wraps to help us work on head movement. You can always find a way. It's just how bad do you want it. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that video learning how to pivot to your left and right as a right-handed fighter and as a southpaw. Next week, I'll break down how to step and pivot to our left, how to step and pivot to our right, when to use just a regular pivot and when do you have to step and pivot. There's small little details, key details of when in situations, when to do something, when not to, and I'll explain further in my next video. But until next time guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Check out my other playlists, and until next time guys, this is El Castigador. I'll see you.